Hi, how are you? I thought I'd check in and see how everybody was doing after Snowmageddon. It's been a while since we've gotten together, and I thought, you know what? Let's chat. We've got a class coming up on Monday, and yes, even though it's family day, we've still got a class coming up because I miss it. I miss you guys. So I wanted to talk a little bit about story before we get together on Monday. When you're writing a story, it isn't necessarily made up of he said, she said, or they did that and then they did this. It's made up of description because when you're telling a story, you're in a place, you're in a location, and that background description is really important for helping to develop that story. For instance, if you were talking to your grandson about using a phone, a dial phone from way back when, when we were young, how would you describe it? How would you share all the little details of it with your grandson? Because, you may be talking to him about talking on the phone for hours on end, because kids don't do that nowadays. They text, but they don't necessarily talk for hours on the phone anymore. When I had my phone, when I was younger, it was turquoise. It was mounted on the wall, and it had a really long cord. And when my girlfriend called, I would go around the corner and hide in behind the couch because the cord was long enough, and we'd have a talk behind the couch, behind the wall. And it was very private, and I felt like I was in a cave, and it was just me and my girlfriend. So when you're talking about that phone, when you're talking about things from the past, you need to describe it. You need to flesh out what it looked like, where it was, how you talked on it, which direction you held it so that you could talk properly, how you dialed the number, all sorts of things. When you're writing to your daughters, think about, you're not just going to say, well, he said this and she said that. You're going to describe the place you're in. When you look at a picture, this is a really good example. When you look at a picture, you see people lined up. They're smiling, they're waving, or they're doing something. But what's happening on the outskirts, on the outside of that picture? What's happening behind those people? What's happening with the photographer who's taking the picture? When you're thinking about reading to your grandchildren, well, I know that not from grandchildren, but from reading to young kids, that they love the description. They love hearing place and hearing that place described. They like hearing and the colors of the animals, the shapes of the animals, not just what the animals were saying, if it's a book about animals. If you're writing about moving from one province to another, you need to consider, well, along the way, you saw different things. You saw different cars. What was the car you were driving in? What does it look like? It's really important that you understand that when you're writing a story, that description about the outlying things and places that go with that story help magnify the impact of what you're writing. So I have a job for you. What I've done is I am writing a story about my life and when I was younger. And so I wrote a card and I put I put telephone at the top, right in here. And then I described the telephone. And what I've got was turquoise, mounted on wall, cord reached around corner of kitchen, and was stretched from long conversations with friends sitting behind the wall. When it rang, you could hear it outside. The zero was slightly faded from overuse, and I held it to my ear and mouth in a very certain way, because we used to try talking the other way, and it didn't quite work. So what I found with that exercise is initially I just put down points, turquoise, phone, wall. And once I got going, suddenly something clicked in my mind, and I started doing, oh yeah, okay, I used to go around the corner with the phone and talk to Valerie. And suddenly the description of this phone was developing into actual story. So here's your task. Here's your exercise. I challenge you. Take one aspect, one thing from your story. It can be a place, it can be a photograph, it can be a description of the first time you saw your daughter. It can be your daughter's first day at school and what she looked like, what car you drove, that kind of thing. Take one aspect of that event, of that picture, and just jot down on a recipe card. I have a larger recipe cards. Jot down all the things you can think about that event or item and bring it to class on Monday. We'll talk about it then. Thank you. Have fun.